Thank you, President. Conference. Also thank our guests, our colleagues and dear friends that are here from around the UK and from around the world. There are so many reasons for us to be united, whoever and wherever we are in the UK or indeed around the world. United as teachers, educators, trade unionists. United in our knowledge that great teachers are union-made. United in our conviction that education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. As the old adage says, no one forgets a good teacher. They just forget to pay them well. I can't take credit for that one. But not only that, they forget to treat them well too. In spite of the public praise from ministers at its peak during the pandemic, teaching today ranks in the relegation zone when it comes to graduate pay, according to evidence from Income's data research. Indeed, ministers' words of praise belie the government's real contempt for the teaching profession. We saw that, colleagues, didn't we? We saw that with the leaked WhatsApp messages between Gavin Williamson and get me out of here, Matt Hancock, as they said that teachers were looking for an excuse to avoid having to teach. How dare they? Gavin and Matt, to paraphrase from your colourful exchanges, what an absolute bunch of wasters you and your colleagues really are. I had to remind myself there, we do have a code of conduct. Conference. How can any government claim to value teachers when they've presided over a system that's seen teachers' pay fall by more than 25% in real terms in the last decade? Teacher morale is so low, the government refuses to collect the statistical data to track the extent of the problem. Well, if they won't do it, then we will, and we do. And our evidence, colleagues, our evidence confirms that 73% of teachers are seriously considering quitting the profession, and they won't recommend teaching as a career to anyone else. That's shocking. Teachers in the UK work the longest hours of any teachers anywhere in Europe, with employers paying lip service to teachers' contractual working time rights. And no wonder, when the government gives permission to employers to overload teachers and school leaders and to disregard your right to a life outside work. No wonder, when we have supply teachers denied equal rights. No wonder, when we have a pay and conditions framework that, frankly, is a license for the institutional abuse of teachers and head teachers. A pay and conditions framework, conference, that we will campaign to change with our Time for a Limit campaign 2.0. Time for a maximum limit on teachers' working hours. Time for a 35-hour week. In conference, we won't stop our campaigning until we secure our vision of a better deal for our members. Our members shouldn't have to take industrial action simply to benefit from the working conditions to which they are contractually entitled. But I'll say this, that we'll always support our members whenever their rights at work are being denied to them. The conference, we need an end to the 13 years of failure. 13 years where schools have been defunded, children's services decimated, and where the rate of child poverty has been rising and rising, while services to support children and families have been axed. 4.2 million children in the UK are living in poverty. Nearly half of them, nearly half of children from black and minority ethnic backgrounds live in poverty. Here in Glasgow, a third of children are living in poverty. And we know it is a shame, because we know that poverty blights childhoods. Growing up in poverty means a child waking up cold, going to bed cold, going to school hungry, missing school, and achieving fewer qualifications than their peers. And teachers working in the most socially and economically disadvantaged areas tell us that they face some of the biggest challenges, often with the least support. Our members, teachers and head teachers, want the very best for every child, but they're struggling to hold together a system that frankly is already broken. And it's the poorest children who are suffering the most. Conference, we're here today because we're all passionate about children's education. We care, and don't let anyone tell you any different. And that's why we're taking our own action on poverty again this year at this conference by sponsoring the Pollock Shields Community Food Point here at conference, and I'm sure you'll dig deep and give generously. Conference, it's right that we demand a system that is much more ambitious for all of our children. Not a system where 3 in 4 teachers report how vulnerable children are left waiting months, if not years, to access vital mental health assessments and support. Not a system that fails to respond when schools raise safeguarding concerns to keep children safe because other agencies are so overstretched and so under-resourced. We want an education system that's built on high investment, not a system built for failure and which is educating our children on the cheap. And in the world's 6th largest economy, there is simply no excuse, no reason why governments cannot invest the resources needed to deliver the very best and ensure that no child is left behind. You know, the government is fond of telling us that inflation is the problem, caused by the costs of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. That's the reason why they can't invest more and pay teachers more. But the truth is, the rot started a long time ago. In conference, we are demanding better. Better for all of our members. You know, for teachers, by a margin of 2 to 1, they're saying that their workplace is having a negative impact on their well-being, according to the charity Education Support. For black teachers, for women, for disabled teachers, LGBTI teachers, the problems are made worse as a result of unchecked discrimination, sexism, and racial abuse in the workplace. 13% of teachers say they've been physically assaulted by a pupil in the last year. Teachers daily being pushed, shoved, kicked, punched, spat at, or threatened with physical violence, racially abused, sexually abused, or trolled on social media. Employers failing to carry out risk assessments. Teachers denied support. Teachers deterred from reporting violent assaults because their schools don't want anything on record that could undermine their reputation. You know, it's shocking, colleagues. How did we get here? How do we get to a situation that here in Glasgow, our members were directed by their employer to put up with violent behaviour at one school or face action from their employer? Instead of backing teachers, Glasgow City Council locked them out. Locked them out, colleagues. They told our members that if they refused to teach a violent pupil, they, the teachers, shouldn't bother turning up for work and they'd be sent home without pay. Outrageous. Is it any wonder that some pupils feel that they can push their teachers around and get away with it if employers are doing exactly the same? So I want to pay tribute today to our members at Bannerman High School and to William Reynolds, their rep. Conference we do and we should applaud their courage and the professionalism that they showed throughout that period. Members who were left with no other choice than to take the ultimate step of strike action, which won commitments from their employer to stop the violence and to keep teachers and other pupils safe. But no teacher should have to take industrial action to have a safe place to work. Safety is a right, not a privilege. And no employer should force any teacher to be in a workplace where they can expect to suffer physical assault from a pupil. And let me say this, that this union, the NASUWT, will always step up to protect our members by any means necessary. And if we have to do so alone, then so be it, colleagues. So be it, colleagues, because over the last 12 months, we've given notice of more than 197 days of strike action, often alone, which meant that our members were protected from abuse and injustice at work. And in the last year, we fought not only industrially, but through the courts too. We won more than £15 million in compensation for our members, following successful claims on bullying, health and safety breaches, and personal injury at work. But colleagues, we should take no comfort from that. Take no comfort from those legal victories, because those compensation awards, they're a further demonstration of a system that is broken and that is failing teachers. Negligence and failures that resulted in, for example, one of our members suffering life-changing injuries after being viciously assaulted by a pupil in her classroom. Yeah, we secured £350,000 in compensation for our member, but she was left with permanent brain injury, loss of sight and hearing. Her kidneys had been bleeding. She had a damaged liver, and she suffers psychological injury. In another shocking example, one of our members, who was pregnant at the time, was set on by a male teenage pupil. Those aren't isolated examples either, conference. They're not the behaviours that merely merit a restorative conversation. But the reality is, had it not been for the NASUWT, those teachers would have received no support at all. In no other walk of life, perhaps boxing or martial arts would be an exception, in no other walk of life would a worker enter their workplace in the knowledge that today may be the day when I'm going to be physically attacked and injured. Teachers cannot continue to work in a system that permits workplace abuse, violence and negligence on, frankly, an industrial scale. We heard about that in the debates this morning conference. And no amount of compensation can ever make up for the devastating impact of physical and mental injury at work. So we need governments to step up. We need governments to act, to send an unequivocal message of zero tolerance of violence towards teachers and education staff, to back any head teacher, without exception, to back any head teacher who excludes a pupil who physically assaults a teacher, and to introduce a positive duty on education employers to carry out health and safety risk assessments to protect teachers from violence and assault at work. You know, actions speak louder than words. But of course, words do matter too. Do you remember the infamous words from the notorious former Chief Inspector of Schools at Ofsted, Michael Wilshaw, who bragged that if anyone says to you that staff morale is at an all-time low, you know you're doing something right. Shame indeed. Those comments are setting up our members for failure. Is it any surprise that the inspection system today is now being credited with inflicting untold misery onto teachers and head teachers alike? You know, it's seriously the case that inflammatory and careless talk costs lives. Conference, an effective inspection system should genuinely support the work of teachers and head teachers, not denigrate them. And more importantly, an effective regulator should be holding the government to account for what they're willing to invest to secure quality education in our schools and colleges. It's time for ministers and the inspectorate to stop blaming teachers and to take responsibility for their actions. But the reality is we have a broken system, rigged against teachers, with teachers and head teachers paying the price. So we demand change and we demand better, conference. And I'm pleased that some parties have adopted our view that a high-stakes accountability system is damaging to the profession. It's damaging to students. It's misleading parents and the public, and it has to change. And I've asked the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, to consider her position. But perhaps she's misunderstood my question. Perhaps my black country accent, I don't know. Hardly surprising if she's misunderstood, given the high turnover of education secretaries since conference last met, last April. We've had 5 of them, averaging 2.4 months in office. Conference, for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not necessarily saying that Gillian Keegan has outstayed her welcome, but she certainly hasn't yet passed her probation. And she won't. And she won't, conference, unless she pulls her finger out and gives teachers a proper pay rise and one that is fully funded. But returning to the theme of inspection, Gillian Keegan should establish the independently led inquiry that we asked for into the impact of inspection on teacher and head teacher workload and well-being, and she should report on the findings of that commission as soon as possible. The Education Secretary, if she cared enough, well, she could take action now to end the toxic climate of fear that is failing our education system and that is damaging the well-being and careers of so many dedicated teachers and head teachers. And whilst she's at it, she should also take a look at the Teacher Regulation Agency. a body that's vying to hold the mantle of bully-in-chief. It's got a new online reporting system. Well, these are modern times. We've got to go with with what young people want, so they say. An online reporting system that encourages anyone to complain about a teacher with total disregard for any notion of natural justice or respect for a teacher's employment rights. We've got private firms lined up, legal firms I should say, lined up to game the system. These private legal firms are dragging out speculative cases and profiting from the misery of teachers unfortunate to get caught in the TRA's crosshairs. The TRA has got a target for cases being heard. They should be heard within 52 weeks of referral. But cases are taking 113 weeks on average. Meanwhile, teachers are being denied information, presumed guilty whenever referrals are made. Teachers are being subjected to vague and incoherent charges. Evidence disclosures are denied to teachers so they can't even answer the charges that are being brought against them. Specious complaints are clogging the system. Teachers are left in limbo, careers put on hold, teachers find themselves blacklisted with complaints remaining on file for years, even when they're not going to be progressed. Untold damage is being caused to teachers' personal and family lives. Another example, Conference, of a failed system that's setting up teachers to fail. And I can think of no other worker today who's subject to such legal jeopardy, injustice, and lack of due process. You know, of course, we want a proper system of teacher regulation, but this is not it. The TRA's actions are simply an abuse of power by a body that's dysfunctional and wasting public money. And given the current situation, Conference, it's high time for the TRA to reform or go. Conference, we take seriously what our members tell us, and ministers, whether that be Jenny Gilruth here in Scotland or Jeremy Miles, for example, in Wales, they need to do likewise. I would say this, that governments in Wales, in Scotland, Isle of Man even, have exposed the lack of ambition by the government in Westminster for teachers in England. Only in Northern Ireland, where there's no functioning executive, can teachers claim the award for the least favourable treatment. If MLAs won't act, then our members will. And that's why our members in Northern Ireland are poised to take further strike action on the 26th of this month. And I know Conference will applaud their courage and their resilience. And Conference, on the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, isn't it about time that teachers in Northern Ireland were treated with dignity, respect and equality and given the rewards that they deserve? In England, Gillian Keegan said that she wanted our members to tell her what they thought about her pay offer. Well, they did. And they delivered their pretty clear end-of-term report. Gillian Keegan must try harder because your efforts and your offer simply are not good enough. 86% of our members rejected her pay offer, and that's why we are now moving to ballot. And I've written to Gillian Keegan to ask her to now return to the negotiating table immediately. And I've also put her on formal notice that we are balloting our members for action. Colleagues, the Education Secretary's haste to strike a deal in just 6 days has unravelled. It resulted in a contemptuous offer that received the response that it deserved. And I've been clear to the Education Secretary that you started the negotiations, so now you have to see the process through. We're saying to Gillian Keegan, she can't leave unfinished the job of settling this dispute. Neither should she abrogate her responsibility to fix the problems created by her predecessors. And I also say this to Gillian Keegan, that if you think you can rely on the pay review body in England to do your bidding and recommend yet another below-inflation pay award for our members for September, then you're mistaken. So get back around the table whilst there's still time. Negotiate a proper deal or deal with the consequences. But you know, instead of working with the profession, we have a government that wants to rely on singling out teachers with its egregious strikes bill, which would allow employers to sack striking teachers. That from a government that already allows unscrupulous employers to use the immoral tactic of fire and rehire to worsen our members' contractual rights. And you know, although employment law may be set by the Westminster government, we're asking ministers in Scotland and in Wales to show us what they're made of. And today I'm calling on Hamza Yousaf to use his new position as Scotland's First Minister to fix this broken system, intervene to stop the use of those bully boy tactics and to tell his alma mater, Hutchinson Grammar School here in Glasgow, to desist from bullying our members and withdraw immediately their threat to fire and rehire dedicated and committed teaching staff. Otherwise, our members will have no other option than to take strike action to defend their jobs and their livelihoods. Our members there have a mandate now for industrial action, and they will use it if they have to, and they will have our fullest support for as long as it takes. But honestly, colleagues, I say, and this conference says, it's time for the hostilities to end. Let's go back to the beginning. It's time to recognise, reward, and support teachers who do the most important job in the world. And I'm sure that the campaign plan from this conference will be setting out how we intend to achieve that. And we want political leaders at home and abroad to demonstrate real ambition for children and young people by investing in teachers and committing to eradicate child poverty. And if the politicians at the next general election want the votes of our members, then they need to commit to fix our broken education system, to end the hostility against teachers, to declare that time's up on teachers working till they drop by guaranteeing a limit on teachers' working time, to declare that time's up on workplace bullying and the abuse of our teachers, to declare time's up on violence and assaults in the classroom. And if ministers will not pay teachers well and will not treat them well, then we will demand a government that will. That's what it takes to repair the damage, always putting teachers first. And that's why we're proud, colleagues, to be the Teachers' Union. Thank you.